mentioned we were going to have Jeff Pearlman on. He's been on before, New York Times best-selling author. And the new book, The Last Folk Hero, The Life and Myth of Bo Jackson. He joins us on the program. What made you decide you were going to go all in on Bo Jackson?
I mean, I'm a nostalgist when it comes to sports, probably like you are. When I think about sort of my childhood, on my wall, the Bo Jackson poster with the bat overs. In my college dorm at the University of Delaware, the poster with him in the different, uniforms. I think he's mysterious. I think there's a legacy there that hasn't really gone sort of a deep dive. And I just am fascinated by him. I'm fascinated by everything about that guy and have been for a long time.
I have the Nike campaign. I have the baseball. It's over here on the wall. Bo, just do it. And I don't know how old that is, how many decades old that is, but I remember getting it. And this is with the baseball and the football with Bo and those great commercials. I might be 35 years old. But it feels like everybody has a Bo Jackson story, or they've heard a Bo Jackson story. Were you, as part of the challenge, kind of sorting through and say, that's real and that's not real?
Yeah, definitely. And also allowing a little bit for the mythology of it all. Like there is a certain, like he played the first night game in University of Georgia baseball history. And they put in the lights and they brought Auburn his junior year of baseball. And everyone kept telling me this story. They're like, Bo Jackson hit the lights with a home run. Bo Jackson hit the lights. It was crazy. And I'm like, and this is 39 days before The Natural came out. I'm like, there's no way Bo Jackson hit the lights. That's stupid. Well, Bo Jackson hit the lights. He was playing right field. They were booing him to hell. His first at bat, he grounds out. They're mocking him in the outfield. His second at bat, he comes up against a pitcher named Larry Lyons, University of Georgia, hits a ball that slams into the light fixture, falls to the ground. He jogs back out to the outfield. I swear to God, Dan, this is true. They're bowing at him. His next two at bats, Dan, he hits two more home runs. His last at bat, he doubles and they boo him. True story, 100% true, but not on tape.
How much interaction did you have with Bo?
Very little. So when I was first working on the book, I sent him a copy of some of my other books. I wrote him a note. He called me. We spoke for about a half hour. He was incredibly nice. He told me, a lot of people have reached out to him over the years. It's not his interest to write a book. He doesn't really want to be involved. So I then got really lucky. You remember Bo Knows Bo, the autobiography. Everyone remembers that book. Yeah. So that was written with Dick Schaap. Before Dick Schaap passed away, he donated all his notes and all the audio recordings to the Auburn Library, all of them. They've been sitting in a basement for 30 years, and I was able to acquire them. And it's basically hours and hours of Bo Jackson talking to Dick Schaap, most of it never used. I also interviewed 720 people, just a real sort of deep dive into the guy.
But why do you think he said no?
He's very guarded. He's very reluctant. I think athletes of that generation, a lot of them think like, this guy's just trying to make a buck off me, or this guy's just trying. I mean, I get it. A lot of these athletes from that era feel like they were taken advantage of. I think his legacy is worthy of a deep dive biography. I think people should remember him. I think my kids should know who he is. But I 100% get it. I never begrudge someone.
I always wondered this. Certain guys love sports, love playing a sport. Some guys are just good at it. They don't love it. They're just really good at it. Andrew Luck, I don't know if he loved it. He was just really good at it. And then I always thought with Bo, did he love football, or did he was just great at football, but he loved baseball?
He loved track. He loved track. Like he loved track. At Auburn, he was a great sprinter. Mm-hmm. He would have been an Olympian. There's almost no doubt about it. Skill-wise, he was there. I mean, he ran a 4.13 40 at Auburn. He liked football. He liked some of the elements of football. He liked baseball more than football. He liked the pacing of baseball, the camaraderie of baseball. But really, he was coming. He was showing up at the stadium. He was doing his job. He was leaving. I also just want to say, Dan, he shows up with the Raiders, and they actually are skeptical of his 40 time. So Tom Flores is a coach, and he has him run a 40 on grass in pads, and he runs a 4.19. They don't believe it. They have him do it again on grass in pads, 225 pounds. He runs a 4.17.
He ran it better the second time.
His first major league at bat. His first major league at bat, September 2nd, 1986, Royals, White Sox. He hits a grounder to second base, Tim Hewlett. He beats it out. 3.6 seconds. It is the second fastest recorded time ever from home to first by a right-handed hitter. It's his first at bat. The only guy who ran faster tape wise was Mickey Mantle.
Yeah, I remember that.
It's a joke.
I do love the story when Bo got brought up to the Royals because he was coming up, and that was a veteran team. You had some crusty old veterans there. Tell the story when Bo, first goes into the locker room.
Well, he shows up. It's like so tone deaf. It's fantastic. With a stack of glossies of him with the Heisman Trophy, and he signed them all and went locker to locker and left them on the seats, thinking like Frank White and George Brett. What they really need in their lives is an autographed picture of some 22-year-old. And Hal McRae was the DH in his last year with the Royals, and he goes around following Bo, and he takes the pictures and starts throwing them up in the air, and everyone starts throwing their own pictures up in the air. And George Brett looks around and he like takes 4 of them and hangs them up by his locker. Everyone else just chucks them away. He was arrogant, but he was cocky. He was confident. He was not arrogant. He was very confident.
I had an opportunity. First time I interviewed him, he had won the Heisman. And I was working at CNN, sat down and did an interview. And he had a really bad stuttering problem. And so you didn't really know about him. What you knew is what you watched with Bo. And he wasn't effusive. I kind of careful in what he was saying and how he was saying it. But later on, I played golf with him and Jim McMahon.
Oh, wow.
And Bo putts one-handed.
Yeah.
And he was great because I let McMahon and Bo talk because being a reporter or journalist, I wanted them to just have fun. So we were playing a round of golf in Chicago, and I just remember Bo putting one-handed, and I said, why are you putting one-handed? He goes, well, look at how well you putt two-handed.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I was like, oh, okay. But he was telling stories back then, whereas, he probably wouldn't have done that if it was just me and, somebody else. But with McMahon was able to talk to him and get him to be a little bit more forthcoming.
Wait, Dan, you know how you and I in media, we come across certain guys who aren't really good for us, but we admire them because we understand that they're actually like, I remember doing a story years ago. Sports Illustrated sent me to do a piece on Paul Konerko, the White Sox first baseman. Yeah. And I showed up in Chicago, and the guy said to me, I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't really want an article on me. It's nothing against you. I just don't really want that. Like, I'm pretty happy right now, and I'm living my life, and I don't need 5 pages in a magazine about me. I'm good. And you're like, oh, man, I just flew out here. But you also kind of admire it. And I feel like that's Bo Jackson in a lot of ways. Like, everyone's like, oh, it's such a shame. Your career was cut short. He's like, I don't see it as a shame. You could have been in the Hall of Fame. I don't really care. Like, I don't care. And I kind of admire that. In fact, very much admire that about the guy. He's not out there comparing himself to Derrick Henry. He's not out there saying, you think this guy's good. You should have seen me. I could have been Mike Trout. Never, ever, ever. And it's one of the most beautiful things about him.
Well, it's like John Stockton. John Stockton, we'd get to the NBA Finals, and NBC would be begging John to do an interview. And he'd just say, I don't want to do it. That's not why I play. I play to play, not to do these interviews. What did you find out about the hip injury with Bo?
Well, it was, first of all, the Raiders really butchered it at first. He was basically, it's this debilitating hip injury, and he's on the sideline for the rest of the game. He's in the locker room after, just kind of hanging around talking. He went to Buffalo next week when they lost to the Bills 51-3. When he finally got a scan of the hip, there was a huge black mark on the scan, and the doctor says, Bo, do you know what that is? And he's like, no. He goes, that's your blood pooling in your hip. And he had just signed. Right after that hip injury happened, he insists to everyone, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be fine. The Royals signed him to a $2 million contract.
And that was big at the time.
Oh yeah. And they thought he was going to report to spring training and be okay. He reports to spring training on these purple crutches. And he goes to Alabama to see Frank Andrews, Dr. Andrews, to get a look at the hip. And while he's in Alabama, the Royals release him because they're either going to be on the books for $2 million or they're not. And they're just like, you're not going to come back from this. You can't come back from this. It is impossible for you to come back from this. And the thing about the Royals, their vantage point, John Sherholtz, Art Stewart, they didn't want him playing football from the beginning. And they said from the very beginning, don't do this. Don't do this. Told his agent, don't do this. He insisted on doing it. He was mad at them after they released him, but I don't really see what option they had.
And then he got an artificial hip.
Well, first he played. Here's the crazy thing. 91, he signs with the White Sox. Everyone thinks it's a joke, a gag. White Sox just getting some publicity points. He comes back at the end of that year playing without an artificial hip and basically limping along, and he's not awful. But he comes back for spring training in 92, and it's a really sad, there's a sad moment I wrote about in the book. He's limping all over the place. He hits a grounder in a spring training game to short. Cecil Fielder's playing first for the Tigers. He holds his hands up to Alan Trammell saying, don't throw the ball, because it was so pathetic watching Bo limp down the line. He didn't want to embarrass him. He gets a hip replacement, comes back in 93. White Sox make the playoffs. He hits a huge home run to get him there against Dave Fleming in Seattle.
We're talking to Jeff Pearlman. The book is a great book to pick up, The Last Folk Hero, The Life and Myth of Bo Jackson. You also wrote the Brett Favre book, and then everything that came out, you sent out a tweet, I believe, saying basically, don't buy this book. If you haven't bought it, don't buy it. Did you see any of this coming?
I feel like in a way, we all did this wrong. We in the media. I won't speak for you, but I'm saying like when he sent that, this is going to sound corny, when he sent the pictures of his, private parts to Jen Sturger, the sideline reporter, I feel like Brett Favre should have been dead to us all. Like that should have been enough. Yeah. Like what kind of person does that? And we always fell for the gunslinger swagger. Oh, he's a gunslinger. Look, he's coming back with the Vikings. My book was a hard look at him. It was not a glorious look of Brett Favre, but I still think, did I fall for this? So the reason I sent out that tweet, the guy allegedly took money. He's from Mississippi. This is your state. It is the poorest state in the nation. People need welfare money to survive. And you and the governor are funneling welfare money to pay for a volleyball arena at your alma mater that you could afford. I always think like, did you learn nothing from your career, from the diversity of sports, from being around guys from different backgrounds? You've certainly played with guys who grew up in largely African-American communities, who grew up on welfare, who grew up with hardworking parents who needed help. Did you learn nothing? Does that just mean nothing to you? And I was so disturbed and so disgusted. I was like, don't buy this book. Don't waste your time reading about this jackass.
Yeah. All right. My guys want to pitch you your next book.
Love it.
Okay.
I'm in.
All right. Paulie, I'll start with you. Give me your elevator pitch for Jeff.
I think Larry Bird is one of the greatest athletes of all time. I think the story of his youth, there's a lot of stuff there about Bob Knight and going to Indiana. Was he doing garbage and he was found at a pool and all this stuff with Indiana State? His family, his father. There's a lot of people outside of Indiana don't know his background, and I think a really detailed book would be fantastic.
Hasn't that already been written?
With him, he wrote
Bob Ryan already
done
it?
Drive with Bob Ryan.
Yeah. Okay. Seton, what's your pitch?
Well, this is another athlete who seemingly has endless legendary stories about him. Probably more humorous than anything because the dude was just like a walking, I don't know, just one line after the other. Okay. But John's hitting 316. Ricky's hitting 330. Ricky Henderson, the stories about him are just the absolute best. But I know there have been a couple books about him. But I feel like there's got to be more stories out there.
All right.
Wait, Dan, can I just say,
yeah.
Howard Bryant released a book probably 5 months ago called Ricky. It's a tremendous, tremendous biography.
It's
of
on
Ricky.
Seton's
It's
desk,
literally
right?
sitting on my desk.
It's over there. That's why I was saying. Howard wrote this already.
And you can still have another one.
Todd, what's your pitch?
My pitch is, if not the brothers, then we focus on Sterling Sharp. 7 seasons, he was on to major greatness, had the neck injury, personality, maybe not quite as much as Shannon Sharp, but I'd be interested in a deep dive on Sterling Sharp.
I think it's a little too niche. Too little niche.
Is that just a
We'll do the
story?
Yeah.
Then we'll do the Wesley Walker biography.
Oh, yes. One eye. He's my kind of guy.
Marv, you got a pitch for Jeff.
You know what? The business of LeBron James with Rich Paul, Maverick Carter, the entire thing from the jump. I'm sure it's probably been written about, but Jeff, like the Showtime book was ridiculously good. So just a real deep dive into even the Cavs.
Now I got you kissing up a little bit. Oh, yeah, Showtime Lakers was great.
I'll take it. Yeah.
Jeff, what are some of the ones that you're thinking about?
I actually have been talking at length about, just with friends, about Larry Bird as a possible. I think there is a great Larry Bird biography to be written. Their last book was the Bob Bryant book when he was still playing.
Wait, hold on, Jeff. What, Seton?
Okay, what about UNLV, late 80s, early 90s.
Ooh.
There's some stories there.
UNLV.
Yeah, I think it's the thing is I'm being serious. Like the question is like, is there mass audience appeal? Are enough? I'm not saying there isn't, but are enough people gonna bite on a UNLV book? Are the names big enough? Tarkanian, maybe Larry Johnson, Stacey Augman. I just don't know for sure.
You got
Someone said to me
Vegas and gamblers and,
Wait, let me ask you guys. I'm being serious. Someone pitched me an idea or said to me the other day, you should do a book about 80s wrestling, like WWE 1980. I think it's not a horrible idea, right?
Well, you're going to have, a mass audience that are going to be interested in that. Absolutely. Yeah. What, Marv? You want another pitch?
I'm switching it. No. The Urban Meyer Florida Gators teams.
Whoa. Marvelous.
That's not bad. That's pretty good. All right, I'm in.
You're in.
You guys pay me. Dan Patrick Press.
Well, you're going to get 30 minutes with Urban Meyer because he's probably not going to want to talk about this?
I'll just go to the bar he owns and hang out with the attractive women. And
he'll show up. Look at that. Shots fired. Did you hear what Pearlman said about Urban Meyer? Good luck with the book. It's one of those fascinating guys that you're right. He didn't say much. I don't know how many great interviews you actually heard, but the stories about Bo told by other people, that's what makes it so much fun. But because they tell it in a way where you're not going to believe this, and then you eventually believe it when, they back it up.
I do just want to say he hit a baseball in a game against Fairfield High that went so high that the left fielder, by the time it came down, Bo was rounding third base. And I thought that was ridiculous. And I talked about 12 different people from that game, and they all told me the same story. So maybe it's not true, but maybe it is.
But didn't you talk to the pitcher?
I did talk to I don't know if I talked to the pitcher from that game. I talked to the left fielder who caught the ball.
Oh, the left fielder. Okay.
I talked to the pitcher from the game against Georgia.
Oh, okay. Hey, thanks for joining us. Always great to talk to you, Jeff.
Thanks, Dan.
That's Jeff Pearlman, New York Times best-selling author, the last folk hero, had the Showtime Lakers. He's doing well, on a roll.